Hi, I'm Justin. Thanks for joining. I want to talk a little bit about performance reviews. It's the beginning of a new year. Performance review season is coming up. You're no doubt getting emails from HR about these deadlines for getting your feedback in the portal. So I want to talk about the value of doing that because I've read recently different opinions that say it's a bunch of hogwash. You shouldn't do it. It's pointless anyway. It's just a point on the calendar and et cetera, et cetera. And so there's some truth in that. And also there's a whole lot of false. So if you've seen some of my other videos, especially the ones on accountability and expectations, you'll know that I'm really big on making sure there's a clear alignment of expectations and resources at a minimum to drive employee engagement. Employee engagement is that enthusiasm in employees, that ownership sense in their company. It's what drives employees to bring you problems and solutions that they're hearing from your customers and from others on the team, instead of just holding on to them, shutting the door, shutting their computer at the end of the day and going home. When you see companies that stand out above and beyond the rest, most likely a good part of that can be tied back to a highly engaged workforce. So performance reviews. It's the end of the year. We're going to do them now. Maybe we do them mid-year. What's the point? Well, I think the reality is that throughout the year, most managers don't have the cadence and the connectedness with their team that would be that high bar in order to avoid the annual cadence. If we don't do them annually, the reality is they're probably not going to happen very often, if at all. So why do they need to happen? It's a point in time. It's a summary of the expectations and the performance against those expectations. Not to mention, you're going to have a limited amount of dollars to reward people with at the end of the years. Companies are for profit. There is a budget. It is a reality. You got to work within that. If you end up peanut butter spreading reward dollars across your team, you get a little, you get a little, you get a little. What's going to happen is they're going to look at that and say, why would I bother outperforming? Why would I bother trying that hard? At the end of the year, we're just all going to get the same reward anyway. You know, the similar thing happens when people aren't performance managed and exited from a company. You end up with people looking at them going, well, if they can get away with that, why am I busting my butt trying to work harder and, make a big difference for our customers? Now, some people are going to do that naturally, and I love that. But the reality is we have pay systems for a reason, especially in sales, customer success on the revenue side of the business. Of course, you have incentive models. So if you have an incentive model and you're peanut butter spreading it to everybody, what's the point? It's really not gonna work. So you're going to want to make sure that you have been clear with expectations all year long, and that you've taken good notes and documented throughout the year. Now, I know some of you are going to be listening to this going, well, crap, I didn't do that. Start now so that you can be a better manager next year, so that you can be a better leader for your organization next year. But in the meantime, start with a self-review. Ask each of your team to provide a self-review, and you should prompt them with some questions. What were you particularly strong at this year? How did you perform against expectations this year? Think of the key questions that you normally see in performance reviews and collect that feedback ahead of your preparation for their review. This is one way to avoid surprises during the performance review session. If you've ever been in a performance review session with your boss, perhaps, and you came in thinking, I had a pretty good year. I hit my quota, 12 out of 12 months of the year. I ended up delivering on all the goals. And you walk in and they say, you had an average year. And you look at them and say, well, I'm sorry, average? Like, I feel like I did pretty well. And of course, you don't want to be confrontational. A lot of people don't anyway. You end up in that uncomfortable situation where you have two different points of view on what you actually did that year. Now, flip the script. Put yourself in the manager's seat with your team. You walk in and you remember the last couple of months of this individual's performance, and it was pretty good. And so you give them a pretty good review. And then all of a sudden they remind you that back in January, they created some amazing innovation project, et cetera. They did something else in March. And toward the end of the year, it was average, but the beginning part of the year, it was actually pretty dang good. You've forgotten about a lot of that, unfortunately. That's just a reality. If you use the self-review model and collect that ahead of time, I guarantee you're gonna collect a lot of that feedback that you might miss. The other thing that strikes me in my experience is that a lot of managers don't feel super confident in their ability to evaluate. They feel like they have to have all the right words, it has to be structured perfectly, and so you end up procrastinating and delaying. In reality, Nobody's perfect. For me, developing habits is important. And so I've developed a habit over the years of providing feedback throughout the year. My teams will tell you that when we get to our one-on-one each week, we open a shared document. They see the topics I want to talk about. I see the topics they want to talk about. And we see notes from the last several weeks, especially when those notes include feedback around what's going on or performance issues in particular. So by the end of the year, I can sit down with the team and say, well, look, I mean, if you've read what I read throughout the year, here's all of the feedback. It's in a document. Let me provide you some summaries of what we've gone over this year. And really, it's just a point in time summary of the year versus some new feedback to the team. I think that's the absolute best way to go about it. But as we talked about, a lot of you have not had that level of documentation throughout the year, and you'll do it next year. So what do? You start with the self-review so that you avoid those surprises. You want to develop confidence in the areas you're focusing on, so therefore the expectations you're setting. And you want to have a rich set of feedback, which you'll find happens throughout the year if you set those notes in the agenda in your one-on-ones. So as a manager, as a leader in the organization, accept that high responsibility for diligently collecting feedback throughout the year, providing reviews weekly, monthly, check-ins extremely often in one-on-ones in a shared document. And that way, by the end of the year, it's not going to be a problem. You have all the feedback there. But in the meantime, use that self-review model. Let me know how it works in the comments. Thanks for joining. We'll see you soon.